I'm back with Brian Kilmeade. The book we're talking about, Teddy and Booker T, How Two American Icons Blazed a Path for Racial Equality. Brian, if I was speaking on a campus 15 years ago or 20 years ago, I would assume that the students knew who Teddy Roosevelt was. They would know who Booker T. Washington was. They probably heard of W.E.B. Du Bois. They would have some background knowledge of the topic, and I would be playing off of that. Do you find yourself in a situation today where, because of the sort of decline of emphasis on history and concrete knowledge, leave aside the full story, a lot of young people perhaps don't know the story at all, that when you come out with the book Teddy and Booker T, do people know right away who Teddy is? Do they know who Booker T is? Can they fill in any blanks at all? Or do you have to start out as if you are sort of a fourth grade teacher and go, well, there was this guy named Booker T. Washington and he was born in slavery and so on? How do you handle it?
Both. Number one, very intelligent people just weren't that into social studies or history. And they're busy, whether they're truck drivers and have an interest, but don't have the knowledge. But everybody knows Teddy Roosevelt. Booker T. Washington, his name is known, but not what he did. So that was my focus, is define who they are, the odds they overcame, and how they came together. And just because Teddy Roosevelt was rich doesn't mean his life was easy. And I wanted to bring that up right away.
Let's talk about the relationship between the two. Teddy Roosevelt is elected, I believe, 1901. Booker T. Washington, born a slave, becomes the most sort of powerful figure in the American South, the most important African American, a Black American. And the South, of course, is overwhelmingly Democratic. It was before the Civil War. It remained after the Civil War. And so you've got a powerful Democratic establishment that is very hostile to Booker T. Washington. So lay the scene for the famous dinner between Teddy Roosevelt and Booker T.
I found it fascinating that Teddy Roosevelt read Up From Slavery. That's the only thing I had in common with him. And that's what I read. That's what got me excited about this book. And I said, this is unbelievable. I can't believe this book. And I wanted to read more, and that led me the other way. So they met in 1901, I think it was April, and they agreed to, Edith read it to his wife, Teddy Roosevelt's wife. They met in Manhattan, and he said, let's work together. I need to know more about the South. Mom is from the South. It's the two brothers. My uncle has fought for the Confederacy, but if I'm going to be a political figure, I need to be able to win over the Black vote. You understand what you've done in Tuskegee. And then we get a letter, Dinesh, and you probably read it, where he writes to, and they promised to go to Tuskegee. He was going to see it as vice president. And he writes a letter apologizing, but McKinley is assassinated. I'm now president. I'm not going to be able to come see you. As if Booker T needed an explanation. But then they would set up the meeting, and they would eventually meet at the White House. And just like he would say, a letter arrived at his hotel. It says, the president would love for you to meet him tonight for dinner. And he said, there was a part of him that said, maybe you shouldn't do it, but how do you turn down the president? He shows up. America at that time, as you know, was not necessarily ready for a Black man to eat with the president's white family. And that became some of the most horrendous headlines you could possibly imagine coming and written in American newspapers in certain sections in the South. And it hurt both their causes. So they kind of had to pick their spots when to go public with their relationship, but it didn't really hinder their relationship, in my view. They just had to handle it differently because they knew the country they were in, not the one they wanted to be in terms of race relations.
We have to be candid and admit that this was a time when, and this was, again, politically coming from the Democratic side, you would have Democratic congressmen and senators not hesitate to use the N-word. I remember, I think it was Senator Vardaman, who basically said something like, oh my gosh, now that the president is sitting down with the black guy, we're going to have to kill 1,000 N. In other words, just to put them in their place, because they're going to be so out of control after this after the symbolic value of this gets out there. So this was fraught, not just, by the way, with rhetorical excess, but there were lynchings going on throughout the South. There was violence. This was the era of the Ku Klux Klan, which had a revival, of course, a little bit later under Woodrow Wilson. So this was a dangerous atmosphere, I guess I'm saying, in which these two men got together.
And it was, Dinesh, by the way, did we just whitewash American history, or did we deal with it directly? Do we say that segregation wasn't a problem? No. Do we say that Ku Klux Klan didn't exist? Do we say that was easy for blacks in the South? No. What I think is the biggest joke is a lot of people talk about you and they might talk about me and say, well, whitewashing history. Absolutely not. Tell the true story and the heroic figures that rose up to push us more towards a perfect union. But everything you just said is 100% correct. And the number two is you had to worry not about their relationship or each other, but how it helps their cause. For Teddy Roosevelt, I got to be the president that's going to make the country better. For Booker T. Washington, it's all about Tuskegee. If I do something that makes Tuskegee the enemy of the South or the people of Alabama, anything but an asset, I've lost. It's not about Booker T's fame. It's not about his location as it relates to the most powerful people. It's about what helps the most amount of African Americans in the South, and that was Tuskegee. And he damaged that, even though he did nothing wrong. But he damaged that in some people's eyes, and that's why he had to be more careful. He would help people out who were unjustly being prosecuted by paying their lawyer fees, harboring them, but he had to keep a lower profile. When W.E.B. Du Bois and company would say, stand up, take a stand. But back then he said, what's going to help Tuskegee? What's going to help another generation of Americans in the country I'm in, at the place we're in the South? And if I make a public stand and Tuskegee pays the price, who have I really helped?
I'll be right back with Brian Kilmeade. Debbie, on a really good health journey, but we still struggle to eat enough fruits, veggies, and fiber. And guess what? That's a requirement. So lucky for us, we discovered a Balance of Nature, and there's no better way to get all your fruits and veggies plus fiber than with Balance of Nature. This is Balance of Nature's fruits and veggies in a capsule, so easy to take, made from fresh whole produce. The produce is powdered after an advanced vacuum cold process, which stabilizes the maximum nutrient content. And this is Balance of Nature's Fiber and Spice, a proprietary blend of fiber and 12 spices for overall and digestive health. Join Debbie and me. Start your journey to better health right now. Call 800-246-8751 or go to balanceofnature.com. You get 35% off your first preferred order by using discount code America. Again, it's balanceofnature.com or call 800-246-8751. Get 35% off your first preferred order by using discount code America.